FrEaK AcCiDeNtS. Victim of physics. I remember the first time I ever saw death up close. I was 10 years old. I was with my grandmother and two brothers. We were on our way to church, riding in her powder blue 1985 Buick Riviera. It had a blue velvet interior and it felt like a cruise ship. My older brother was in the front passenger seat, I was sitting behind him, and my little brother was in the car seat next to me. We were on our way to church part 2. My grandmother belonged to a church that would do church activities all day, with a short break in the middle for dinner. We were on our way back to a church meeting, or church part 2. It was about 6 p.m. and a cool autumn evening. There were sounds of colorful leaves rustling under the tires and gospel music playing on the 8-track. I rolled down my window to feel the cool breeze on my face. That's when I noticed the car next to us. It was a 1986 Dodge Diplomat. I was fascinated by the man driving it. He was in his mid-40s and looked like he could have been a math teacher. He was in a daze. His face was weathered and he looked frustrated, like his dream of being an astronaut had long evaded him and he was now stuck teaching ungrateful high school students. I remember thinking, I wonder what he wanted to be when he was a kid. As my grandmother cruised down the road, we hit a series of dips that would give you butterflies in the stomach. The math teacher hit the dips as well, and for a second, I saw a smile stretch across his face like a kid as we both rode the waves. My grandmother loved to drive like she was in NASCAR, but the guy kept up and he stayed right next to us. I think he was a little impressed by who was driving our car. However, the thing we both failed to realize was that he was in the far right lane, a lane that would soon end without notice and become lined with cars. I saw him quickly look down in his seat, searching for something. When he looked back up, his eyes grew to the size of saucers, and I saw him let out a gasp right as his car plowed into the first parked car. In an instant, he had become a victim of physics as his body was propelled through the front windshield and onto the hood. My grandmother kept driving, oblivious to the carnage. It happened so fast, I questioned my own eyes. It wasn't until my brother turned around in the front seat and mouthed the words, "Did you see that?" that I realized it wasn't my imagination. My grandmother was late to that church meeting. She missed most of it, so we didn't have to stay long. On the way back, we had to go down the same street. By now, the street was packed with emergency vehicles and onlookers. An officer directed us past the scene. That's when I saw what was left of the math teacher, lying on the ground, covered in a white sheet. I've thought about it from time to time over the years. Sometimes I think about how his day must have started that day, or how did he think his day was going to end? Other times I think, the inside of a Dodge Diplomat would not be the last thing I'd want to see on the earth. But mostly, I'm confounded by the idea that I saw a man's final moments when I was only 10 years old. I saw his pain, his frustration, but I also saw that little kid inside of him smile for just a second. And in the next second, he was gone. Plum Crazy. It was the 80s. Ronald Reagan was president, the Challenger had just exploded, and Run DMC's new album Raising Hell was on the top of the charts. I was an 8-year-old kid with dreams of becoming Bruce Leroy from The Last Dragon. It was the end of summer, and I was at my babysitter/cousin's house with my brothers. My cousin's neighborhood was always full of activity. There were always smells of barbecue and Jerry curl juice wafting through the air. sounds of lawnmowers and ice cream trucks in the distance, drug dealers rolling down the street in Mustang 5.0s bumping Run DMC's My Adidas, and me on the sidewalk practicing my karate moves by myself. On this particular day, I was down the street with a group of kids waiting for Craig to turn on the fire hydrant. Craig was the epitome of 80s cool. When he wasn't working on his car, an S-curl perm, gold chains, and a silk shirt was his daily uniform. His pride and joy was his 1970 Chevy Nova. He'd be in the driveway working on it whenever he had the chance. He was always friendly and looked out for the kids in the neighborhood. On hot days, everyone would come out and play in the fire hydrant. It was in front of Craig's house, and he would always let us play in his yard. He agreed to turn it on, but someone had to go find the big wrench that turns it on. Meanwhile, he blasted Eric B. and Rakim's I Ain't No Joke on the radio while he worked on his car. Despite the steep angle of his driveway, he put the car up on a jack to remove the rear axle. A few feet away, a group of kids were playing Duck, Duck, Goose on the front lawn. I was off to the side practicing my karate moves. I was trying to possess the power of the glow like Bruce Leroy. Suddenly, I heard a crash and what sounded like a dog yelp. I looked around and saw the car was now laying on the ground and two legs were sticking out from underneath. It had fallen on top of Craig and crushed him from the waist up. Screams of anguish cut through the blaring hip-hop. Adults, much taller than me, ran around, shouting things at each other. My 8-year-old brain couldn't comprehend the severity of the situation. It looked like a prank or some kind of Halloween decoration. In an instant, I became morbidly fascinated by the blood running down the driveway. It was so thick and bright and red. I got down on my knees to see it up close. I even dipped my toe in it to see what it would look like on my shoe. In reality, it was the brain plasma from Craig's head splitting open. He had lost his life, and his family would be changed forever. Hours later, a firefighter was spraying down the street with a hose. He looked traumatized by what he had seen that day. He looked at us, and I guess we looked traumatized too. When he was finished, he decided to unhook the hose and let the fire hydrant keep going. The kids wasted no time jumping back in and playing in the water. It felt a little strange, but I think everyone needed it. After Craig's funeral, his brother picked up where he left off. He finished the car in a deep, rich purple and chrome rims. He called it Plum Crazy. It looked like something out of a magazine, spotless. Fast forward about 15 years, and I was getting my car fixed on the other side of town. The mechanic couldn't stop talking about his car. He went on about how dangerously fast it was, how he took it to car shows, and how it was the baddest Nova on the streets. Nova. Something about that name struck my ear. I asked to see it, and he was more than happy to take me out back. When I rounded the corner, my mouth fell open. Standing before me was the one and only Plum Crazy. It looked like he pulled it out of a time capsule. I could tell he was proud of it, and he had no idea what I knew. He noticed the strange look on my face. It was hard to hide. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the tragic story behind his car. Instead, I just said, "Yeah, it's the nicest one I've ever seen." Hey everybody, this is Creflo Penny, and I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. If you like this and you want to hear more, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Take care and have a great day.